This is a homage beat.
Grace and peace, grace and peace. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of I Saw the Lord. It's your boy Brandon back once again. It's good to be here. Last week, me and Shanetta had a really good time discussing the concept. Let me see what concept it was. I know these are out of order, so many apologies, but we were discussing why do people use drugs, and it was a really good concept. It's one of there's a lot of them are my favorites, but it was one of my favorites. It was concept number 33, and we were talking about why do people use drugs. And I say it all the time jokingly. A lot of the chapters, they don't jump out at you, but I'm pretty sure that one did jump out just because it's so prevalent in our society. And just answering the question, why do people use drugs? A lot of times it's just for recreational purposes that we all are seeking some sort of satisfaction. And we see the harmful effects of when we look to creation, drugs, or whatever our choice is of seeking satisfaction that is not God. We see the end results of that it's a good thing to seek joy and satisfaction, but we are ultimately supposed to seek that in our Creator, and most of us don't. Most of us do not find joy and satisfaction in God. Therefore, we turn to other things like drugs, and we see the harmful effects of doing that. But we had a really good time, and just talking about that is Jesus, who comes and says that I'm the bread of life, that those who drink from me will never thirst, those who eat will never hunger, and that he is the one who completely satisfies us by granting us eternal life. So if you haven't had a chance to check out that concept, Shanetta did a great job with that one. So check it out on SoundCloud and iTunes. But this week, I'm sorry, we're going out of order. We're in concept number 30. What are the benefits of a rock? And once again, I have another special guest with me from Vision Church, my Brooklyn native with me. I'm so honored and thankful to have this brother with me. Kieth, how are you doing today, my brother?
I'm good, man. Thank you. I really appreciate you just having me up here, Brandon. Yeah, if you would ask me at any point in the past, would you be up here recording a podcast with me, anything like that, I'd be like, I don't know, Brandon. But just in time that, we've just been in community together and just growing and just learning more about each other, it's just been a blessing, man. I'm just glad to be up here. So just thank you for having me up here, man. Just anything I could do to help. I'm a listener of the podcast, and I just love listening and appreciate all that you do.
I appreciate that. If you would have asked me the same question too, I would have said no. We were talking about it earlier. I'm more of behind the scenes guy. I hate being in front of the camera. Right. I hate how my voice sounds. So it's like God, I always say God does not care about my feelings. Right. Because it's like he does everything that he can to get me out of my comfort zone. But I think that speaks volumes because it just shows that this is real, this is authentic. Right. That I'm not doing this for any kind of show or anything like that. I don't like the attention at all. But for his glory, that I will become the fool, as it says in 1 Corinthians, fool for Christ's sake. But we are gonna jump right into concept number 30. What are the benefits of a rock? And like I said, I always joke about it. But when I was telling you guys last week with Shanetta that I initially had her do a different concept, but then I heard via her husband that she preferred to do this other one, and I'm glad that they changed it because I want to pair somebody up with something that they have some sort of interest in, and since she had experience with drug, it fit perfectly. And if you listen to the podcast, you see how great that was. Now this one, you're in a completely different field, so I will take the blame that you probably have no history to talk about, even though I thought it was a real good topic to discuss. But when I asked you to do it, and even just as someone who's reading and just says, what are the benefits of the rock? What were your initial thoughts? Because I'm always curious to see how the reader, because I know where I'm going with the topic, but the person who sees it has no clue. Right. So what were your initial thoughts when you saw the chapter, the question of this concept?
honestly, as simple as the question is, it really made me think, because I'm like, benefits of a rock. I don't know. It's a rock. Like, what do you do with a rock? I mean, you throw it, you pick it up. I mean, you kick one. I mean, it's a rock. So it really made me think, well, what are the benefits of a rock? Mm-hmm. What are the uses of a rock? Yeah. You know? So it really made me think, like, rocks are pretty useful once you actually think about it. Once you actually start doing some research on rocks and how they're used and stuff like that, then rocks have a purpose, right?
And I'm glad you said that, because I think just something as simple as that, we don't give much thought. And like I said, before I wrote this, I would have said the same thing. Right. I wouldn't have given it a second thought. And hopefully by now, those who are listening, I'm starting with something simplistic, and hopefully it piques your interest, like, where is he going to go with this? And that's my hope. I hope my hope isn't you read it and you just skip past it. I hope that's not what it is. But I understand for some people, that might be because how I structured the book, one chapter isn't dependent on the other. Right. So I know for a fact that people are just going to skim through and pass over. But hopefully the reason that we're doing the podcast is so that you have a little commentary so that you can go and read for yourself. But I start off by saying this. I say there was a time when kids would go outside and be entertained by a rock. It was not uncommon to see kids throwing, collecting, or attempting to build with them. Today, a kid would think you were crazy if you told them, it gave them a rock to play with. I say, though rocks are outdated, boring, and dull, they teach us a lot about the earth. And I was telling you earlier where it's like, we grew up in a time where we would have to go outside. Right. We didn't have the amenities that my child has today.
No iPads.
Exactly. Where you can just sit. And I'm guilty of it now, but I remember growing up, going outside, going to play basketball. I remember one time, I think it was my grandmother, my aunt, they took me and my cousins to the Poconos, and we just, no TV, no nothing, we just had to go and play. And there were rocks. Right. And as kids would do, not that I'm ever advocating this, but you would have fun playing with rocks. And I definitely had fun. And I was the kid, I wasn't collecting rocks. Right. I wasn't doing something constructive. Right. Of course not, I was doing something destructive. And I was chucking them at my cousin. And I remember I cracked her upside the head with a rock before. So that's one of my fondest memories of a rock. I don't know if you have any memories of just going outside or can relate to how the generation now where they don't go outside, right. You know, it's just sitting down the whole time. I don't know if you have any fond memories of going outside playing.
I just remember as a kid, you know, it wasn't like I grew up in New York. As a kid, when I was starting off, I was in New York, and so there wasn't as much green as there is in North Carolina. There was asphalt, there were rocks, you know, there was dirt. Like that was what we had when we went outside to play. So I just remember just picking out rocks, just using my imagination with those rocks and dirt. And I have a twin, so I had my brother, and we just played with what we had. You know?
Yeah, and like I said, just that's I think when most people think of rocks, they just have this I don't really care. Right. But back in those days, especially I guess even our parents' generation, that's all they had to entertain them. Exactly. Just to go outside and just to marvel at nature. Right. And you would see rocks. Right. You know, and you would do things. You would climb them or whatever. I remember one time that even in college, they took us to some mountain, and we would literally have to climb the rocks and stuff. So yeah, and that's just how I open it, because I think if someone were forced to think about rocks, they might associate rocks with just that's something people used to do in the whole time, go outside and play with rocks and stuff. But I say a rock is composed of one or more minerals. The study of rocks is called geology, and geologists say that rocks contain clues about what Earth was like in the past. There are three classifications of rocks: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. I said though rocks are important in geology, they have great practical uses. Many don't realize this, but we use rocks every day. Now, just as someone who's had, I guess, some time to think about it, what are some practical uses of rocks that you've noticed or you've seen, or even after reading this that you weren't even aware of?
Right. So I think, you know, rocks are used for like granite countertops and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, floors, that's a good one. Yeah.
Right. You think about like the driveway, you think about the parking lot at church or something like that. There's rocks, right?
Exactly.
Right. So it provides direction. It, you know, provides comforts at home. Like, you know, there's just many different things that you can use if you fashion and sculpt and shape rocks, you know.
And that was the whole point, because like you were saying, we don't think how important. I think we just see one type of rock, just the rock that's outside. But I said when I was researching, a rock is compiled of one or more minerals.
Right.
So whatever you see that rock that's outside is composed of some kind of mineral. And we talked about granite.
Right.
I didn't even think of that one because we like the granite, the marble.
The marble's right.
That. And it's like just for just fashion or just for home decor. We like to see that and we use it for those practical reasons. But I say graphite is used to make pencils. Slate is used to make blackboards and patios. Limestone is used to make chalk. Zinc is used to make nails and roofing. Rocks, which are composed of one or more minerals, include mercury, calcium, gold, and I didn't even know that. Excuse me, and diamond. And I say, though rocks are typically thought to be boring and useless, they actually serve a number of purposes. One of the purposes they served was for fortification. Say fortification is the act of building military defenses to protect a place against attack. And one of the most well-known fortifications, and I don't even think many of us, I certainly didn't even think of it as a fortification, was the Great Wall of China. I say the Great Wall of China was constructed in the 7th century BC and built to defend the Chinese Empire from Mongolian and Manchu enemies in the north. And then I even talk about, some of the more American fortifications that we see in America. There's forts. Some of the more notable ones are Fort Sumter. We've got Fort Knox, where is the site where U.S. holds the gold. Fort McHenry. And this was the fort where actually involved in the War of 1812, where the British Navy laid siege to the Baltimore harbor. So I say it's clear that rocks serve a myriad of purposes, but the fact that they were instrumental in military affairs may be the most important. Throughout history, fortifying a city was a way to maintain supremacy. And one of the things, because again, I start off by talking about a known concept, and you're wondering, where am I going? So we see what rocks are, what their practical uses are, and probably the most important, I'm sure there's other reasons, but one of the most important, especially for the purpose of this chapter, was for fortification. It's literally rocks that you're building. Like, we think bricks are, like like I said, for building purposes, we see rocks, and fortification was one of the big ones. And I say the Bible even accounts for several fortified cities. The first mentioning of fortified cities is in Numbers, when Moses sends out the spies out to the land of Canaan, where the spies report back and they say the people who dwell in the land are strong and the cities are what? Fortified and very large. Essentially, their report was that it would be impossible to overtake those in Canaan because they were heavily protected. I said a fortified city was a sign of protection and security. And if those who are not familiar with the story, essentially Moses sends out the 12, which include Jacob and Caleb and 10 others, and they go and they say, we see this land in Canaan that we were supposed to go and take and conquer, and we're just some nomads from Egypt. We don't have any kind of military background. We see what? It says it's a great city. It's fortified. These people are already established. So they report back to the people, and just logically, we've got to put ourselves in their shoes. It's like, logically, it made no sense to try to take that city, because it's like, they're going to defeat us. On paper, they got everything exactly. Yeah. There's no way in the world that we are going to defeat them. And so what happens is the people grumble against Moses and they grumble against God, and they say it's better for us to be back in Egypt. And God gets upset and says, what? You're going to stay in this wilderness for 40 years. So we read an account like this and we're like, it doesn't make sense for them to go and try to take this place.
Right.
So why would God get angry at them for not going to take it? Even though logically, if I see somebody who's bigger than me, I'm not going to go and try to take them. That just don't make no type of sense to me. So why would God get angry at them for not going when they had these fortified cities that was, like I said, signified, security and protection?
Right.
Why did God get upset at them?
I think it's like saying, okay, God, listen, I know what you're saying, but have you seen them? You seen what they have?